Good morning, everyone. This is the 17th episode of the Unifying Force. I'm Kat, joined by Gio and Dave. How is everybody?
Good morning. Good morning.
Really good, thank you.
So, with the Book of Boba Fett now past the halfway point, I thought it'd be interesting to note the certain changes in that character, especially since Fennec Shand even pointed it out in the most recent episode, accusing him of having gone soft since spending his time with the Tuskens, which I agree with. Because in the Clone Wars, we saw that when Boba Fett got arrested and sent to prison, it kind of hardened him because he broke out and he started like immediately forming his own bounty hunter gang, like kidnapping like a teenager, and he's just like being a bit evil. And then we jump ahead to the Star Wars comics where Darth Vader hires him to find out who this rebel pilot was that destroyed the Death Star, and he sends him to Tatooine. And he finds out from the Imperial garrison there that, yeah, there was this guy with a laser sword who killed this guy in a cantina, and then they took off and blasted out of the ship. So he goes to the cantina and he's interviewing the bartender, and the bartender doesn't want to talk to him. So Boba Fett grabs him by the scruff of his neck, throws him over the bar, smashing him onto the table. And the guy's like, okay. The kid, yeah, he's a kid. He's from this moist farm. His name's Luke Skywalker. And then Boba shoots him dead for inconveniencing him to have to throw him over the desk. And I'm like, okay, this guy's pretty vicious. And in Empire, the fact that Vader has to single him out, saying no disintegrations, which sounds like something a bounty hunter wouldn't want to do anyway, because you want to have evidence that, you captured what you got rather than just, so it's a bit overkill. And so in the Book of Boba Fett, the fact that ever since he's gotten out of the Sarlacc pit, he's been very lax. Like Fennec Shand has been very trigger happy in the show, just wanting to go for it. And Boba's just kind of like, nah, man. And he says it's because he's smarter, but I don't know, because I was curious what you guys thought, because he does seem to be a bit different. I mean, I can buy that he was a bit badass and vicious with helping out Din Djarin, because Din Djarin's a fellow Mandalorian. He's like, oh, I can help you because Mandalorian honor and such, but he's not showing that level of, say, skill and intelligence, so to speak, so far in this series. So I thought that's maybe an interesting jumping off point.
What do you think, Gio?
Yeah, he's so far in the Book of Boba Fett, he's more calm, collected, but maybe slightly naive sheriff rather than the crime lord that he, and maybe we all thought he would start acting out as. It seems that very quickly he's been able to shed off that old bounty hunter title and want to replace it with a new identity. Whether or not that's successful, I guess we can wait until the Book of Boba Fett. We've got the whole storyline in view to really summarize. But yeah, it's definitely been a case of falling into the Sarlacc, close to death for a couple of years, emerging without being stripped of his actual Mandalorian armor. Seems to have been a pretty on the nose reference to him stripping away his old ways and becoming something more of a mature but maybe more pacifist character than what we're used to seeing, and that the name Boba Fett triggers all these images and memories of a silent, deadly side character supporting Vader and the Empire, and he was certainly still had moments of viciousness as a child in the Clone Wars, and now we see something quite different.
So I want to get the. I don't get why people are as upset about this change in the character, because it's definitely not without precedent in film. This entire arc with the Tuscans and the change in that you see in Boba is very reminiscent of John Dunbar's or Kevin Costner's character in Dances with Wolves. It's a very similar. It's a film trope. It's there, but it's also not without precedence in Star Wars canon. Star Wars non-canon. The EU depiction of Boba is he becomes this person with regrets and becomes more of a person of honor in the EU as he becomes the Mandalore and leads the Mandalorians against Yusong Vong, and he even gets to this point where he's changed enough to where he works with Han Solo. He's working with this former bounty. It's a very big change of heart that has happened to Boba that's non-canon now, that I think a lot of the people that are upset might not know about, this kind of storyline that's already gone out there and done. So yes, he's changed, but I don't dislike it so far. I have complete others. Don't the angry emails in the comments. I have complete other problems with the Book of Boba Fett show. But
my issue with it is that repeatedly in this show he's told people, "You know who I am? I'm Boba Fett." I'm like, well, wait a minute. If you're trying to be this new person who's respect and all that, then why you keep trying to cash in on your deadly, vicious past? Like in the latest episode when he's chasing this rabbit droid around the kitchen and he grabs it and he just holds it up like, "You know who I am? I'm Boba Fett." And I'm like, are you seriously pulling that shtick on a droid? And then the rabbit droid outsmarts him even. And Fennec Shan just gives him this look where she basically says, "Are you done playing around?" And that's what I thought was a bit, almost a little schizophrenic, because it's like sometimes he wants to be people to respect him, and we can make more money this way. We're gonna lead by respect, blah blah blah. And then other times it's like he's wanting to have his cake and eat it too, like people to remind it at the same time, because and I think other people might be upset about it because they teased this series beginning with him just waltzing into the palace and just shooting Bib Fortuna, no questions asked. And it's like, okay, if that's your attitude towards it, it's kind of surprising that since then you haven't really, flexed that muscle or been that smart. Kind of like when Fennec Shand has finally suggested, there's people we know from this underworld business who could be, we could hire it. It would be really good to have them work for us. But and I'm like, yeah, you should have probably done that from the beginning instead of hiring the Vespa gang. Or like when BK breaks in, I'm like, that's awesome. But I like that they don't explicitly tell you how he got in, and instead they kind of indirectly reveal it in the flashbacks in the latest episode where we see all the other. I'm like, oh, okay, that's really cool. But I'm thinking if he already knew that was there because he broke in, he should have probably had that, sealed up and guarded. Or like when they go to the major to confront the major domo, and he didn't have Fennec watching the back door,
right.
Or when he went into the cantina and sees that the cantina owner is sweating bullets and even says it, "Oh, you're sweating like something, whatever creature it is on Mustafar." And it's like, if you're just a cantina owner, then there's no reason for her to be afraid of the twins, but she is. And so after he goes outside and talks to the twins, it's like, dude, you should have waltzed right back into that cantina and confronted her and been like, "Okay, what's going on here?" and put your foot down about it. And it seems kind of like he's almost kind of pussyfooting around, like doing okay, we're kind of. And the thing in the comics and even in the films, he was really intelligent too. Like when they revealed in Attack of the Clones indirectly, the reason he knew to park Slave One in the garbage of the Star Destroyer was because Obi-Wan had parked it on the asteroid belt. And it's like, oh, okay. And we're seeing in War of the Bounty Hunters that he's also very cunning and intelligent and trying to outsmart these other bounty hunters. And it just doesn't seem like he's as smart anymore. It's like I get he doesn't even have to be like hitting fools or nothing, but it just doesn't seem like he's as the sharp guy because we've seen him work with Mandalorian before, and the implication that he might be bringing him in as help. It's like, well, we've already seen that, and I'm like, you need to really double down on why everybody. Like to your point about him leading the wars against Yuzong Vong and everything, we know he's capable and intelligent of doing these things, and it just feels like in this series, it's like it's cherry picking when he's doing that. Like the fact that he was smart enough to break into the palace and steal Slave One and chase down those bikers and get them and go to the Sarlacc and all of that. And I'm like, okay, so you've still got it, but then other times you're not really using it. So it just feels a bit schizophrenic to me in that way.
Maybe it's all those months in the Bacta tank messing with his clarity of vision. It's maybe a little side effect from trying to heal the body as he's losing his mind. um, yeah, you're absolutely right. It seems that he has a greater wisdom in the flashbacks, and in his time with the Tuscans, he's more measured. And although it's got a very kind of more slowed down pace, he seems to be more, I don't know, just more in. I mean, it's quite a meditative, slower moment in his life, but he seems to have his wits about him. He's very quick to come up with a plan with the train. He's when he discovers that it's spice they're running, it's almost like he's reestablishing a kind of personal code, which might be more in line with a kind of Mandalorian take on things, where there are certain lines that you don't cross. And yeah, it's maybe there's a bit of catching up to do in terms of his character in the sort of present that the show is doing. But yeah, he does seem to be easily outfoxed by simple things that aren't really too complex or too different. One thing I do feel is good is that the character of Fennec Shand is still a kind of voice of reason, seems to be, reminding him of things that, I mean, most recently, very clearly saying that you've gone a little soft, and maybe she's kind of nudging him back to a more balanced character. It's easy to forget, though, that before the Book of Boba Fett, because they, took a pause on all the EU stuff and called it Legends, that we've seen very little of his adult character on screen and even off. There's, the Star Wars 2015 comic line that you mentioned, which has some good little escapades with Boba, but other than that, he's kind of been the cool action figure on the side still in terms of what Disney's done going forward. So I think that's why it can feel pretty jarring that we're seeing parts of his character that on the surface don't necessarily gel so well with the very quiet, he only had 4 lines in Empire, and I think it was a total of 6 minutes of on-screen time in the original trilogy. So there wasn't really a character of Boba Fett. He was just a cool suit of armor that we learned later was Mandalorian. And now, satisfyingly at least, yeah, as he announced when the Sarlacc was, he thought his armor was still in there, that it was Beskar. We know that confirmed for sure. But we haven't really seen an actual character that has motivations and wants and desires. At least now we've got a little bit of agency, although he does seem to be a little easily kind of outwitted by just the other local leadership that he's trying to unite, and not really able to do so well.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because it does seem like, especially in the flashbacks, he's very intelligent and sharp-witted. Like when he sees those swoop bikes fly by the Tuscan camp, he's already thinking about how he can use them to stop the train. He's already planning ahead. And admittedly, he shouldn't have been gullible and believe that the Pikes were going to keep their word, because even in this episode, when he tells Fennec about why he wants to go after these bikers, she's like, bikers like that taking down a Tuscan camp, not likely. So they're planting the seed that might still be something that the Pikes did, which I still think is his goal overall in this series. I think he's trying to play the long game against the Pikes to avenge the Tuscans. But yeah, I like that you brought that up, because in the flashbacks, he is very smart and tactful compared to the storyline in the present, which I thought was a little interesting.
Yeah, I think they're kind of mixing up the timelines and because again, if you go back to the EU, the Sarlacc took a really an even bigger toll on him than it shows here. It doesn't show the Sarlacc as much. I mean, he lost a leg in the Sarlacc in the EU. Spoiler alert. He did have mental difficulties and mental faculties and different things that happened to him because it, while they weren't really specific on how long he spent in there in the show, um, it was a lot longer in the EU that he he was trapped and he was spending time. I mean, I think there were other prisoners in there that were alive that he was talking to, and just there were
Yeah.
months, if not years, spent in there, and so it did take some effect on him. And whether they're picking up on that, or here's the other thing, is maybe this is just another kind of film trope to where they've got to kind of dumb him down at the first half, the first three quarters of the series, so he can be the big badass for the last two episodes and seriously kick some ass. Or have they taken too much of what was his character, what should have been his character, and given it to Din Djarin? Because I mean that show was originally supposed to kind of be the Boba Fett show. I mean, what do you think there?
Yeah, I'm wondering about that, especially since they've implied that they might be bringing Din Djarin in to the next episode. And it's like, well, you've already teamed up with him before. I want to see you do this yourself. Like, and I get that what you were saying about him not having any animosity towards Han Solo, and I could buy that. Like,
Yeah.
if he had been on the bridge of Gideon's ship when Luke Skywalker showed up, I don't think he would have cared. Like, Luke certainly wouldn't care. It's like maybe Luke would be like, oh, hey, it's Boba Fett. But Boba Fett wouldn't. I don't think Boba Fett would care. It's because that's like, that's under the bridge. That was a job. Which is part of where his callousness came from, that he's just, oh, I'll do whatever it is for the money. And I did find it interesting when he had that conversation with Fennec Shand saying that I'm tired of working for idiots who, could get me killed. And you know how many jobs I've worked that could have been completely avoided if the people just sat down and just actually thought about it. And I'm thinking, okay, so now he's advocating for not even liking the idea of having been a bounty hunter, which is surprising considering that he got to work for people like Darth Vader. And I thought, okay, that's kind of interesting because you don't really get his reaction in the series to the change in a major change in the galaxy, that the Empire has fallen and all that. And it is admittedly unclear how much time he spends where in the flashbacks. Because I was surprised when they finally came to an end, because they mentioned in this latest episode that, oh, you are now fully healed, as if to imply that we're not going to do the back to tank
Right.
thing anymore.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so I guess you were with the Tuscans a lot longer than I thought, because the wreck of the sail barge was still smoldering when he broke out of the Sarlacc pit. So he might not have been there for too long. But I agree that they should have done the EU version, because that was really that was amazing. But yeah, I just kind of wondering where they're going with this idea that, oh, I want to be respected and we're going to be nice to each other. Like, he even accepted the crime family's proposal to just be neutral as opposed to joining him, which I thought was surprising, because it's like, well, Boba, a neutral party can still flip flop. And I know I like that he teases them with the Rancor, but it's like, I don't picture him unleashing the Rancor and going after, like that kind of stuff. So it is interesting to see that, even especially after the Mandalorian, where he's just not he's kicking ass and taking names. It's like, oh my God. And no sooner than he goes to Tatooine, I mean, admittedly, he kills Bib Fortuna, but now he's just kind of, like Gio said, he's getting outfoxed left, right, and center.
Well,
So
I
I'm
mean,
not really sure where they're going with this.
a lot of it is, don't cross Boba and bring out old Boba, really, because the swoop bike guys, no hesitation. When I saw, we're thinking the new Disney whatever Boba, and he's dialed back, I thought, okay, maybe he's going to get on the loudspeaker on Slave One and tell him. No, rolls in and guns them down. Nothing at all. The last guy is like, oh, he's getting away. No, he's the leader. I don't like him. I'm not even going to waste guns on him. I'm going to shoot him with a missile. It's like, he's there. They're just like you
Yeah,
said,
Yeah.
they're back and forth.
I kind of like when he goes into the cantina and he sees Black Chrysanthemum killing the Trandoshans, because the Trandoshan whose arm gets ripped off is the same guy in the first episode who presented Boba with the tribute of the Wookiee pelt. So I can see why he's upset about that and wanting to kill them. And I like that Boba, okay, now he's smart enough to hire this guy. I'm like, yes, that's what you should have done after you were let him go the first time, because they know each other. At least I think they still know each other in this time, in this continuity. I mean, it's the same continuity as the comics, but it's not really clear. Like they haven't really acknowledged it, so maybe not, or they're just totally indifferent about it. But it's like, okay, you're starting to come around, and that's good. And like they're teasing that he's going to ride the Rancor at some point.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, and it'll be interesting to see if I'm right that he wants to avenge the Tuscans, because even with Fennec Shand saying, "Oh yeah, those bikers couldn't have done that," and even though Boba seems to believe that, he still gunned them down anyway, which is admittedly pretty awesome. It's like, yeah, there's that Boba. That's the smart Boba who knows what he's gonna do, and is. It's not just that he earned that reputation because he was ruthless. It's because he was very intelligent and cunning, and I'm just not really sure why. Because in the flashbacks, everything's post Sarlacc pit. Because I assumed that some of maybe the Sarlacc was having some type of effect on him, but the fact that he's like really smart in the flashbacks and not not as bright in the present made me just wonder, like, I'm not sure what really is what's going on here. And essentially, and to your point about, is Disney going to tone it down, he called his ship Fire Spray, which is the type of ship. It's not the ship. It's like, okay. So maybe.
Yeah, there are certain changes they'll make. But as you mentioned, I was really glad to see that for that moment when he was chasing them in his ship with Fennec Shand, it was, yeah, that was no holes barred, no punches pulled. He was there to exact revenge. It was almost like it was just purely instinctual, and the way he went after them, and the statement "kill with a missile" was pretty pleasing, from just seeing that ship in action back in the asteroid field in Attack of the Clones. And yeah, it does seem that if they are holding things back and keeping things a little slower in these this first 4 chapters, that maybe we're looking forward to a sort of Super Friends or Avengers style team up with Din Djarin coming up. And the very little we've seen of the Rancor, again, they've sort of made it so that the Rancor's not just a mindless killing machine. It's I mean, the first thing Danny Trejo says is, he's depressed. They can emote. They are sentient to some extent, and maybe just holding back on seeing the Rancor when he had his very criminal underlord style banquet, the Godfather sort of setup with the other crime lords. Just teasing it there, I'm hoping might be leading to something a little bigger for the conclusion of this book that we're watching. But we also have to remember that even I was thinking back on the Clone Wars episodes, although he did have this kind of vicious little streak. I think when he first went on the Star Destroyer, the Endurance, to amongst the cadets, he was ordered by Aura Singh via comlink to actually blow the reactor core, and he refused. So he very single-mindedly wanted revenge on Mace Windu, and he didn't want sort of collateral damage. So it's not that much of a reach to say that he has had these moments where he's had clarity of thought and he's been able to focus on a mission, and even if that's vengeance for the most traumatic thing of his childhood and his entire life, he didn't want the other bodies piling up. He had a personal code. He was motivated by vengeance solely, but not. He wasn't a bloodthirsty character all his life, and it's easy to see Boba as that calculated, quiet Mark on the side, and we all have our own kind of imaginations that can run wild with what we think Boba's the livelihood of bounty hunting has been. But Filoni was able to humanize him as a cadet even when he was on his mission of vengeance. I think he stunned some of the clones that he ended up brawling with on that shuttle as well, while he wanted to lure Mace Windu out. And then we can talk about, I guess, the familial aspect, the fact that he understands now it's not worth going alone. He can form his own troop, his own sort of crime family, and tribe, and go forward in a more protected manner, and balance these characters around. When he was younger, he had Bosk and Aura Singh, these volatile personalities around him who were a lot more bloodthirsty and was sort of edging him on. He always was able to kind of taper back from that, and that's something that we're seeing a little bit more now, and definitely one of the obvious lessons he learned from the Tuscans in the Dune Sea.
Yeah, I think one thing I hope happens is I hope that people's complaints don't, soften Disney on the commitment to Boba Fett, to that character. I would love to see, Disney, Lucasfilm, Dave Filoni, if you're listening, because yeah, you watch our show. Anyway, but I want to see more flashbacks about what happened before Jedi, before Empire. I want to see a younger Boba Fett, maybe with Daniel Logan. He's out there. He's available.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen him cosplay Boba, and it looks good. So I want to see that happen. They've committed to deep faking him. They're using new footage in the show. I think he's gotten a credit. I think he's given credit in the credits for that. So I want to see more of what happened. What was that life? And like you said, is maybe we'll see more of that personality, to where the outward reputation is one thing. The real Boba was always, the other, the more honorable kind of thing. It's a perception game. He's saying, I'm Boba Fett all the time. Well, he does have that reputation. He has that reputation with Vader. But think about the last episode we saw of The Mandalorian. Is Moff Gideon was about to wet his pants when Luke shows up. Okay? Because of the reputation that Luke would have to an Imperial officer. That's not the Luke that we have seen, seeing Luke through Luke's eyes. You know what I'm saying? Is we had too much time from those 6 minutes of screen time to build Boba Fett up in our heads. And was that ever really him?
Right, but in the new canon material, like I said, they're making him pretty vicious. Like when he kills the bartender, I'm like, really? And the way he's outsmarting and outfoxing everybody more of the bounty hunters, which is why it's like, if you're going to remind people that you're Boba Fett, then you really have to, actions speak louder than words. You got to remind people that you're Boba Fett. And it's kind of, I admit that when he cornered the Major Domo and he gives up, I think it was probably because he landed with his jetpack and he's got the gun. He's like, okay, I'm not gonna fight this type of thing. But it's like, okay, yeah, you're Boba Fett, and if you seriously want to keep being the daimyo of this region, then you really need to show them why you're sheriff. Kind of like when he made that threat to the guy who's the water trader, and he says, you're charging 1,300 credits for water. There should only be 500. You want to sell water here again, you better lower your prices. I'm like, okay, he's barking at him like a sheriff, but you gotta cash in sometimes. And like the fact that it was right after he saved Fennec Shand that he tells her that I'm done working for idiots, and yet you look at the look on his face when he went into the mod parlor, and you could tell that he's not really down with their music or what they're doing. He just wants to get to business immediately. It's like, yeah, heal her and let's get out of here. He's loving all of those people, and it's like, okay, we'll see. But I do like again, like his character arc in Clone Wars, how he goes from being the sympathetic guy who's being manipulated by Aura Singh and Hondo, and he ends up getting very hardened in prison because it's at the end, season finale in season 2 where he goes to jail, and then in season 4 he breaks out,
Right.
and then we see that, and unfortunately the series ended before they could take it further, but apparently there was going to be a storyline where he and Cad Bane teamed up to go after some kid in Tatooine or in the Dune Sea, and it was going to end with Boba forming a strong bond with whoever this kid was, leading to a showdown between him and Cad Bane because Boba had misgivings about like turning this kid over to whoever it was that wanted him, and that led to the shootout. I'm like, okay, so he still carries some of that honor with him.
Yeah.
But when you look at what they're doing with him in the new canon comics, I'm like, man, this guy is really living up to that reputation, to the point that seeing him here, it's like, yes, he wants to remind people of that reputation, but as I've said before, it's like, it's not just the ruthless thing, it's the tactics and the smarts, so to speak. So I'll be very intrigued to see where this goes, and hopefully it's not just his friends bailing him out in the future episodes. But we'll see. But I just thought that was an interesting topic to start exploring, since we're past the halfway point in the show, or in the book of Boba Fett.
Right. And it would, I mean, hopefully we're going to get more. And, maybe the end game is more, Din's, we're thinking coming in here. So are we going to see more Boba in Mando season 3? Are we going to see some of these characters in Ahsoka? So
It's a
maybe
good bet we might see Ahsoka or somebody like that, because Dave Filoni actually co-wrote the 6th episode with Favreau, and the rest are all written by just Favreau. So
yeah. So it's possible to bring that in, and that would be helping to get some hype up for the Ahsoka show, since they've just announced some new casting for that. I wonder, will we see something like BK? Will he transfer over? Will we see some more of that stuff that we've seen in the comics with him and Obi-Wan? Because that's coming, with this, that they've got a backstory, those characters. But yeah, you're right. I'd love to see some of the backstory of all of this, is when BK and Boba knew each other. Would we bring in? I'd love to see Bosk and Dengar and all of those other characters. Hopefully, we don't get just a happy team up of people coming in, unless we get it and Boba's going to become the leader and he's going to just kill it.
Yeah,
That'd be great.
Yeah.
You could go back to EU and okay, Din's got the Darksaber. Din comes back, teams up with Boba. Boba and Din get in an argument. Boba gets the Darksaber. Boba's the Mandalore.
That could be a stunning turn of events. Yeah. I guess, how much do you think that, as David, you mentioned, the initial kind of ball game that Disney had was to have a Boba Fett film, then story, which materialized into The Mandalorian, and how many of those kind of traits that we see Din Djarin have that is almost like a championing of the Boba Fett that some of us imagined, some of us that we wanted to see. Although he had, Grogu for much of his adventures in the first 2 seasons, it did kind of feel like an almost mission of the week, monster of the week style format for a few chapters in The Mandalorian. And maybe perhaps Disney's could very, very easily continue the storylines as we saw the more hardened Boba with, I think it was like CT1 and Dengar at the end of season 4. Leading a little posse of bounty hunters and having his own sort of individualized missions. Maybe those resonate a little bit more easily in the kind of TV format than a kind of a wider story, and a one that has these two timelines, which kind of have the two conflicting Bobas in terms of personality. How much do we think that, Din Djarin's character has kind of edged in a little bit onto maybe what we thought Boba Fett would have been on screen in these wider stories?
A lot, because
Yeah.
that cold open for Mandalorian was like, wow. It's like,
Yeah.
and the way he handles his business, and again, the fact that it seemed pretty clear to me that the whole Baby Yoda storyline, Grogu storyline, the whole Unwolf and Cub thing was taken from that unfilmed or unanimated Boba Fett storyline with Cad Bane and the kid, and it's like, okay, they just transposed that to this new character, and so I feel that's probably definitely where they're taking it. They're cherry picking what's going to go where, because I wonder if at what point they planned this series out, because yeah, it's going to build to something, and I don't think that this is the last time we're going to see him, but I remember that even Tamora Morrison was saying that he would have little back and forth spats with Favreau about this character shouldn't be talking as much. It's like Fennec Shand should really be doing a lot of this, and he would lose those fights, and he would wait till Favreau left the studio, and then he would push for it again. And it's like, okay, so Tim is very much in sync with who Boba Fett is. Like he's the guy who rules more with intimidation a bit, like when he's sitting on a throne with a helmet. It's like, oh god, that's really what brings the memory of his rep. Like when he says, "Do you know who I am?" without his helmet on, it's like, well, it's not really as intimidating as when you see that helmet on, because you can't see his eyes or anything, and it's like that level of fear there. So I would wonder if he gets a little, if he won some of those fights to be less talkative in some of the future episodes. I mean, I'm not sure how they film this stuff. I guess I don't imagine that they film them one episode at a time, just probably, all at once. But so it's like when your own actor playing the role is advocating for, we should stick closer to who this character is, at least who he is in adulthood, and the studio isn't. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I've heard that too. Are we gonna get a behind the scenes with this? Has that been announced? Do we know?
It hasn't been, but I assume we will. And they did a gallery for each season of Mandalorian, plus the special Luke Skywalker gallery. So I'd imagine we'll get something for this.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see how it's filmed and how that works out, is that progression, because if like tomorrow, I think is getting some input on it, because I think the dance with the Tuscans looks very reminiscent of the Haka.
Oh, for sure.
That's a kind of thing that he's doing. So we'll see. It's a collaboration between Filoni, Favreau, each individual director. I think Rodriguez is slated to be the director of the last one, which means crazy action, more than likely. So who knows?
Any comments? Questions?
So I think we haven't gotten any comments and questions from people watching today. I think that this is one that we're probably going to monitor once we post online, because if it's any sort of what's been the discussion online, this is some controversial stuff. Is how Boba is portrayed versus how we all thought he was going to be portrayed. So I guess without anybody commenting at the time, we can watch that going forward. We can watch to talk about it again. We can watch that comment thread, but we can probably end this one up a little bit early. It's a natural kind of breaking point. But I'll ask before we go, and so we'll have video proof and hold you to it. Last two episodes, predictions.
Well, I don't know what they're gonna do because there's 3 episodes left, so I'm not sure what they're gonna. I think he's probably gonna bring in Din Djarin before, Bo-Katan and Oscar Bree. He's but he's gonna have to ramp it up again because there's been people pointing out how there's no real antagonists in this show because it's kind of like a bit of a mystery as to what exactly is going on and why did the Hutts back off so easily. It's like, oh yeah, we wanted to kill you literally last night, but now we found out about the Pikes, so yeah, you could take care of this. And I'm predicting that the reason they were saying that and giving him tribute is to put him at ease, almost in the hopes that, here, you deal with this problem with the Pikes so we can come back and just take it for ourselves. So I think he's going to eventually break the rule because they said that you can't just kill a Hutt, like you need permission. Right. And I don't think he's going to get that permission. I think he's just going to be like, screw this. He's going to take care of the Pikes. And when the twins show back up again, probably to try and screw him over, he's like, no, I don't care. I'm taking this. And that might lead into a second season announcement down the line of him, really going for it and having to go to Hutt or something. So I'm thinking it might go in that direction because I can't think of what a major surprise would be, because when you're over halfway through the series and you still have all these questions about what exactly is going on, it's a little hard to peg for my predictions on that.
Yeah, maybe it is hard to predict because they've kind of gone a sort of convoluted route through the opening 4 chapters, but maybe we could see something from some other wider crime groups trying to, they hear about this conflict broiling on Tatooine and in the fight for maybe Mos Espa. We could have some Black Sun organization, criminal syndicates coming in. I'm almost hoping that, in a way, we see a little bit of Crimson Dawn or maybe some sort of element. Yeah. I think Solo was a really fun sort of breezy adventure and standalone film, but there were a lot of things introduced towards this, the end conflict that teased a lot more from the Star Wars era going forward. And we know that certain characters are still around and having effects in this sort of power vacuum. So maybe this book of Boba Fett is opening up the rest of the galaxy to a sort of wider little conflict. But we'll see.
So I think Gio's gone a lot to where my predictions are going to go. Is I think that we haven't seen the big bad yet. It's not the Pikes. I don't think it's the Hutts. I think, in all honesty, it is probably Jennifer Beals' character is probably going to be your big bad there. Now, whether they bring in Kira, who's like behind that, and it's Crimson Dawn, since Maul is dead at this point, but I don't know. But I think we're gonna see some big bad Boba coming up. If he doesn't ride the Rancor, people are gonna riot. It's just all there is to it. But I would be, and this is possibly more of a hope than a prediction, but I'm hoping that Din brings more Mandalorians with him. Maybe not even just Bo and X-Woes and what's Sasha Banks' character? I don't remember. But Din's the Mandalore. Maybe they're setting up for season 3, and he brings like that whole coven back, or convert. What do they call it? But they bring all the Mandalorians, a bunch of them, and it's crazy Mandalorian battle against maybe the Pikes, maybe Crimson Dawn, something else going on in there.
Yeah, people have pointed out there seem to be subtle hints that Crimson Dawn might have something to do with this. Like, in particular, one that I didn't pick up on initially was when he goes into the mayor's office and the skylight, the way the skylight looks shining down right in front of his throne looks just like the symbol. And I thought, and some people are like, oh, that's reaching. I'm like, it's really not. They think about these things a lot when they put in their designs for these types of things. So much detail and thought so much thought and detail goes into what they're doing.
I think at some point there's another character wearing that similar Crimson Dawn necklace that Kira wears in Solo. So the it could be there. So the question is, what's going to happen? We don't know. You don't know. We're going to find out. And if it's something that's going to affect this topic, we can bring this back and we can talk about all of this again and see, hey, were we right? Were we full of crap? Did this progression of Boba continue, or is he the big badass that all of our headcanon has, brought us around to think since 1980? It could go either way. So anyway, I think that's a good ending place, a good stopping point for us today. Thank you for joining us, those who have. Send us some more comments, even if you're not watching this live. We try and watch, we try and respond, we try and hold some of that stuff down for future episodes. So final thoughts, everybody, wrap up, last message.
Let's have a
Yeah,
good old Rancor versus Rancor battle. The Hutts bring in theirs. It's a lot bigger. Boba is just a little pet compared to what we could see.
yeah, he's got to bring his Rancor into town and let it eat the Hutts as a healthy snack.
Perfect. All right, everyone. We will see you next time. Until then, may the Force be with you.